Hey everybody, this is Alexmerced, developer advocate at Dremio. Now, Dremio has just released this State of the Data Lakehouse report. So essentially, there was a bunch of questions sent out to a bunch of people that answered the questions in order to identify trends in the data lakehouse space. And this report summarizes those results. Um, and I am yet to read the report. Like, I have an idea of what some of the findings are, but I haven't actually sat down. So you're watching my reaction to this report. Now, if you want to get your hands on the full report, head over to dremio.com. So I have it over to dremio.com, and right there on the main page, you scroll down and you'll see here where you can go get the report, and you can download it for free. Okay, so if you want to get the full report, do that. I'm going to go over the first few pages with the key findings. But yeah, let's take a look. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down, see what we got here. So the data and AI technology landscape is in constant state of rapid change. Business knows they need to use data to complete, innovate, and succeed, but they struggle to deliver access to more of their data and to do so quickly, easily, and cost effective. The rise of the data lakehouse. So bottom line is people need data lakehouses. Why? Because the use cases for data are expanding, and you need lots of tools to satisfy all those use cases. There's just no real one size fits all tool. So you need to kind of have your data in a place where many tools can have access to it, and that is the data lakehouse, where the data lake is your center of data gravity, where you store your data and tools know how to interact with that, particularly because of things like table formats. Okay, so this survey is of 500 full-time IT and data professionals from large enterprises, offers fresh insights on data lakehouse adoption and associated cost savings. So these are people who are working at companies who are adopting these technologies, so they're speaking to their experience with that. And again, this particular survey is going to cover just like the data lakehouse in general, table formats, AI, etc. So the majority of respondents were IT, data and analytics managers and directors, data scientists, software engineers, data analysts, and data engineers also contributed to survey results. So you had a really nice, diverse range of people who are responding to this survey. Okay, so let's take a look at the key findings. Okay, so basically these are sort of like the big takeaways of the report. Okay, so number one, with adoption surging, the data lakehouse is becoming the primary architecture for delivering analytics. Cost efficiency and ease of use are the top reasons. Okay, so just off the top there, it's basically saying more people are adopting data lakehouse. And it looks like the reasons they're doing it, and again, that's a key thing, is like what the reasons are, because people don't just do things in a vacuum, they do things for a reason. And that's cost efficiency and ease of use. Okay. Um, what I find interesting is that those are weighing higher than performance, which makes sense, right? Because right now, a lot of times what happens is even if you have fast data, if the data is not easy to use, people can't make good use of it. And if you have fast and easy data, but it's too expensive, and basically the value you're getting out of it isn't exceeding the cost you're spending on it, well, it's not really worth the investment either. Okay, so you really want to make sure that the value you're able to get out of your data is going to exceed the cost of using that data, right? Okay, I mean, I should be able to make, you know, great marketing decisions, great business decisions, great product decisions from my data that provide value that kind of offsets those costs. Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, so let's see what some of these stats are. 70% of respondents say more than half of all analytics will be on the data lakehouse within 3 years, which makes sense. And honestly, that line of what is a data lakehouse is changing. I mean, not only do you see tools like Dremio that make using your data lake much more like using a data warehouse, but you're also seeing data warehouses, extending their ability to access your data lake. So basically, everything is kind of moving towards, hey, move your data to the data lake. I can definitely see that. And when you take a look at sort of like the types of features that are being rolled out by different tools, and 86% have said their organization's plans to unify analytics data. Okay, and that could mean a lot of different things. That could mean, hey, we're gonna make sure that all the data is located in one place, which seems like the data lake would be that place. It could also mean the use of more federated type data tools, okay, like Dremio, where you can connect the data lakes, data warehouses, and databases. Okay, and you're starting to see that. You see like a lot of platforms that are now adding data federation to which means being able to access many data sources, not just their data storage, to their host of services. Now, again, the key thing here, and what makes Dremio a little bit different in this regard, is that oftentimes just federating other data sources isn't enough, because usually the way that works is that you push down those parts of the query to all those different sources. Um, And that can create different bottlenecks. And this is where sort of Dremio really, really shines in sort of being able to kind of eliminate those bottlenecks, particularly with its data reflections feature. So Dremio gives you that data federation, but allows you to take data federation, data virtualization, and really kind of do it at scale, really high performance at scale with a really easy to use way. And that's sort of what makes sort of Dremio special. And if you don't need to believe me, go try it. Like head over to dremio.com/getting started. Like literally just go over here. Okay. Oh, my computer's freezing. There it goes. Okay. So if I go over here and I click free Lakehouse, okay, it's going to take you to the getting started page where you can see how to get started with a self-deployment, okay, which, again, I generally would recommend that if you're going to go the self-deploy route to use the Kubernetes tools, really awesome Helm charts with some nice auto-scaling features. And then even cooler is our cloud managed platform, which is free. You just sign up. It's just a couple of clicks. You sign up with your Gmail account, and you have access to a data lakehouse platform for free. And you can try it out. And again, even before you do either of those, you can do the test drive and just kind of get a nice little sandbox environment to try out. Or you can use a Docker container to just try it out locally on your computer. I got a real good blog I'll point out a little bit later to help you do that. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these other numbers. Over half, 6%, expected they'll be saving more than 50% on analytics by moving to the data lakehouse. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. Okay, so it's not just that more than half the people expect that they're going to save money. More than half the people expect they will save half the monies. Okay, so that's a lot of savings expected by a lot of people. So people are very optimistic on the data lakehouse. Okay, which is a good sign. I mean, this is the reason why you're seeing such movement and such a flurry of movement to this space. And it makes sense. And again, at the end of the day, how you architect your data lakehouse will determine your savings. Like when you're using platforms like Dremio, it can save you that money in lots of different ways. You know, and the fact that you don't have to move your data as much through Dremio's no-copy architecture, the use of things like the columnar cloud cache, which are going to reduce a lot of your egress and network movement costs on your cloud. So depending on sort of the tools you use and how you architect it, you can get very sort of different pictures of that story. Again, it's just generally going to be a good place where Dremio has a really good story to save you money. 42% moved from a cloud data warehouse to the data lakehouse, more than from any other environment. Top reasons were the shift of cost efficiency and ease of use. Okay, so it goes back to like that whole. There's a couple different ways where basically data warehouse costs, especially in the cloud, can really build up. So you're ETLing your data from your data lake. So you already have your data lake. It's there. But you're still moving all this data over to your data warehouse. But you're going to get hit with a bunch of egress costs. Okay, so not just the cost of the compute to move the data, the cost of the storage to store the data in the data warehouse, and then all the more sort of expensive compute once you're in the data warehouse. But you're also going to get hit with all the costs of just moving the data out of wherever your data lake is. Egress costs. And that can get really expensive. And especially since like a lot of people might practice what's called ELT, export load transform, where they're doing the transformations after they land, which can be a really great pattern if you're doing that after you land in the data lake. Okay, and this is where like Dremio is really awesome because we have a DBT integration, so you can do all that ELT work using DBT right there from the data lake, which is going to be a more low-cost proposition. But when you're doing ELT from the data warehouse, well, you're doing all these transformations in a place where storage costs more and compute costs more. So it can really add up and really kind of eat up your costs. Okay, and then another thing people don't realize is that you're building up, like, it's tracking historical versions of your data, which can be really useful for like rollbacks, things like that, but you're paying for all these different versions of your data that you might not be being mindful of or managing in your data warehouse. So the costs oftentimes exceed what you probably expected going into taking on that. Doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't have a data warehouse, but again, a lot of people are trying to see if they can consolidate their data gravity so that way they can reduce that storage, reduce that compute, reduce those egress costs, whatnot. The data lakehouse pattern does that, and then Dremio kind of even magnifies that savings. Okay, so again, cost seems to be a real big concern, which makes sense in this environment. Again, if you've seen the economic environment the last couple of years, it does make sense that it's an environment that's sort of very cost sensitive as companies seek efficiency. Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, open table formats are transformative and Apache Iceberg adoption is rising. Okay, so let's just explain like why they're transformative in the first place. A open table format, which could be Apache Iceberg, Apache Hoodie, or Delta Lake, they allow tools to be able to use your data, the data in your data lake, as it were a database, okay, and have lots of features that just weren't possible before with just a bunch of files in a data lake data repository. That's what basically makes the whole idea of a data lakehouse possible. It makes where you can treat your data lake like a data warehouse. So yeah, that's very transformative. And Apache Iceberg, for many reasons, I've written a lot on this, and I'm one of the co-authors of Apache Iceberg, the Definitive Guide, which if you browse around the Dremio website, you can get yourself an early release copy of. I'll put the link in the video description if you want to get yourself a free copy of the book. We talk a lot about that in there, sort of like, all the benefits of Apache Iceberg. But let's take a look at this. Amid the generative AI frenzy, a quieter revolution has been taking place, bringing full SQL capabilities to big data. Open table formats enable data warehouse functionality directly in the data lake while preserving freedom. Good. Almost a third of survey respondents are using Apache Iceberg now. And over a third are on Delta Lake, which makes sense. Delta Lake has been sort of bit more mature for a little bit longer. Databricks is a huge platform that a lot of people use, so it makes sense that like Delta Lake still kind of has like this. It's still riding the momentum it's had, while we're seeing a strong momentum for Apache Iceberg as well. Among those planning to adopt a table format, and again, whether you're using Apache Iceberg or Delta Lake, Dremio can read your tables in both. Although you definitely get some extra bells and whistles with Apache Iceberg, where you can also do DML, have all sorts of data management features and whatnot. So yay Iceberg. And the cool thing about that is it's not just that Dremio does it, but it's just many options where you can get similar features for Apache Iceberg tables. And that's the reason why I feel like Apache Iceberg has had this momentum. It's not just because it's another format. It has some novel features like partition evolution and hidden partitioning, which I'm not going to get too deep into right now. Okay, we have blog articles over there at dremio.com/blog. But you have options. You don't have vendor lock-in. Like basically, if you want to manage your Apache Iceberg tables, you have Dremio, you have Tabular, you have AWS just released like their features regarding that. And more entrants are kind of getting into that sort of management space. So you have options. The point is you don't have vendor lock-in. While like in something like with like Delta Lake, Databricks is your option for a lot of aspects of working with Delta Lake tables. And that gives you a little bit less flexibility. And I think people, especially in an environment where people are concerned about cost, as we saw in the previous insight, it's going to make sense that people are going to want that sort of flexibility and freedom to be able to not be married to one vendor permanently. Among those planning to adopt the table format in the next 3 years, more are choosing Iceberg than any other table format. Okay, because again, you go back a few years ago when people were making this decision, Delta Lake was just more mature, but now Iceberg is pretty mature. So going to those considerations that I mentioned just a second ago, it makes sense that more people are saying, you know what, I'm in the early stages of my data lakehouse. I no longer kind of have to just kind of bite the bullet and deal with sort of like that marriage to Databricks. I now I have an option, so I'm gonna exercise that option. And again, there's nothing wrong with being like, if Databricks serves your use cases, that's fine. But again, in an environment where people are concerned about cost, they're going to want that flexibility where they don't have to do everything in the data warehouse, where they don't have to do everything in Databricks. They'd like to be able to have those tools and have other tools. And that's sort of like, the ultimate promise of the data lakehouse. Cool. Let's take a look here at the third insight. Data mesh is the heart of digital transformation, with full or partial implementations happening at most enterprises and expansion expected by nearly everyone. So data mesh is increasingly a business-driven strategy. Now, first, let's just talk about what is data mesh. Okay, so data mesh is a architectural pattern, the same way that data lakehouse is an architectural pattern. But they're not mutually exclusive. You can have a data lakehouse and a data mesh. It's just they're solving two different problems. A data lakehouse, again, moving your center of data gravity to your data lake and using tools that work with your data lake as the main way to sort of drive your analytics. That basically handles the problem of saying, hey, I got so many use cases and my data is growing so fast that no one tool can handle all of it. So the data lakehouse makes it where you have multiple tools that can work with your data for multiple use cases. Now, data mesh is answering a different problem. The problem is like, hey, my centralized data team can't handle the growth of my data. and meet the SLAs that we require to get the data where we need it, when we need it. What we really need to do is to break up the division of labor when it comes to our data and say, okay, well, this team is responsible for this data, this team is responsible for this data, and when I say this data, these different areas are referred to as domains. Okay, they could be represent a special business line or a special expertise, but the idea is you have different domains and teams curating that data into what are referred to as data products. Okay, and then Dremio is really good for this because Dremio is a platform where you can basically each of these teams can store that data where they want. So you can have different data lakes, databases, data warehouses where they store their data and unify it in all one place, curate that data into things that you can easily share and govern. Okay, so you can easily have multiple data products that are pulling in data from different places that you can easily share and curate and decentrally govern, but still have a central access point. So when it comes to that, sort of these two sort of burgeoning trends, data lakehouse and data mesh, Dremio's particular architecture really lends to implementing both of these patterns, which are generally necessary in today's world, or at least growingly necessary as the demands for data grow, pretty compelling. So, there's a reason why people use Dremio the way they've been using it. And if you haven't seen how people are using Dremio, head over to dremio.com/customers. And you can actually hear a bunch of stories of different customers that use Dremio and the experience that they've had. Along with, you can go to the last Subsurface conference where we saw great talks from like Memorial Sloan Kettering, TransUnion, Experian, about sort of their experience with Dremio and how it's not only like allowed them to break up data silos and implement data meshes, but allow their businesses to produce sort of new value for the world, whether it's expanding credit, green initiatives, or enhancing cancer research. So there's a lot to look at and reflect on there. So that's what data mesh is. So data mesh is, again, that enhancing your division of labor when it comes to data. Now, bottom line is, we take a look at this. Let's take a look at the numbers. Data mesh initiatives are driven more by business leaders and business units than by centralized IT teams. So that's basically saying that it's not the centralized IT team going, oh man, we can't manage this. It's other people who are kind of seeing the outcomes of just sort of like the growth of the scale of their data and saying, okay, well, this is maybe not ideal. We need to find a better way of doing this. And then bringing that in. Okay, so basically that initiation of that isn't necessarily coming from the people who are curating the data at the time, but from the people who are seeing that things maybe need to be done differently. Top objectives of implementing a data mesh are improved data quality. Okay, and that's a big deal because at the end of the day, when a centralized IT team can work really well to a certain point. Okay, because you have one group of people who kind of are aware of how all the knobs are turned and how all the things are allocated. But eventually you have so many different types of data, so much data, so many people using the data that central group just can't manage it the pace. And that's why you want to break it up and say, okay, hey, you're in charge of this data. And then the people who are in charge of that data know that data. They're people who are in that field. So not only can they do the data stuff, but they understand the context to better model, to better curate, because they're like subject matter experts. And that's going to improve data quality because they're going to catch things that may not necessarily be as obvious when from a generalist point of view. And data governance. And again, basically having teams that say, okay, we have our data product and we manage how our data product is governed, okay, allows there to sort of be very clear who is responsible when something goes wrong, but also a clear scope of responsibility to make sure that things go right. So these make sense as sort of like the reasons people are really liking data mesh, because it really is about having the quality and governance, but being able to do that data quality and governance and do it at a reasonable amount of time. Okay, almost half of respondents also named agility, scalability, improved data access, improved decision making. So that's some of the things I kind of alluded to there. 84% of respondents have fully or partially implemented data mesh, and 97% expected data mesh implementation to continue to expand in the next year. So a lot of people are already using datamesh, especially particularly of the 500 respondents here, and they're going to continue doing so. So that looks like datamesh is here to stay. Okay, so the last section of the key insights. And then again, if you want to read the rest of the report, head over to dremio.com and go download the report. But the data lakehouse is critical in the AI era for improving AI-driven data management, governance, and compliance, as well as the work lives of IT professionals. Okay, it's critical in the AI era of improving AI-driven data management, governance, and compliance. So let's see where they're going with this one. Data self-service, which data lakehouses enable. Okay, so bottom line is just saying like data lakehouses make data more self-service, which is true, in the sense that apologize. Um, if all your data is kind of in a place where more tools can use it, then tools that are easier for people to use make it easier to access that data, especially when you're using tools like Dremio that really focus on that self-access. Like literally you can lay it on your diverse data sources and make it really easy for your users to access the data. And the benefit of that self-service access is that they can do amazing things with that data because they're not waiting weeks for every little change they need made to the data. There's a certain level of curation and last mile ETL that can be done by your end users. So let's see, it is a fundamental for AI development. So basically, they're saying like it's that self-service aspect that makes AI that serves AI development. So basically, the fact that data lakehouses makes the data more accessible allows it for there to be more movement and development in AI because basically you can go grab the data you need when you need it to kind of keep building these projects that just require more and more data and require that. Okay, with respect to job-related issues, the majority cited manual repetitive processes and manual data merging and reconciliation as problems, speaking to the need for more automation and AI-assisted data management and governance. And data management is like a big trend right now. Like I mentioned earlier, like particularly in like the Apache Iceberg space, there's like now like many people who are offering management of your Apache Iceberg data and automating that. So like Dremio has automation of your Apache Iceberg tables management. And some of the others that I mentioned earlier. So like it's a space that is currently sort of really developing and will be a big thing as basically people really make that data lakehouse the center of their world. Okay, with respect to job-related issues, the majority cited manual repetitive processes and manual data merging and reconciliation as problems. So basically, bottom line is just like having things to help you make sure the data is there is easier is cool. 81% of respondents are using a data lakehouse to support data scientists building and improving AI models and applications. Okay. To support data scientists building. So bottom line, oftentimes like you see this, especially particularly with like a platform like Databricks that really is sort of like AI is like their bread and butter. They're built for that, a lot of that in particular. But the point is just having that place where you have that large repository data, just makes it, whether you're using whatever platform and accessing that data however, just easier. Okay, 60% disliked manually merging and reconciliating data from multiple sources. Okay, and again, this is where somewhere like Dremio really is helpful because again, Dremio has that ability to federate at scale. And again, not just federate, but federate at scale thanks to reflections. And that's important because a lot of places will say, hey, we can connect to multiple sources, but can they do it at the scale that Dremio can in order to enable building out things like AI and without having to move the data around all the time? Okay, because even when you use other platforms, other sort of data lakehouse setups, you might still have to go move the data into your data lake to really kind of get that effective access. Dremio makes it where you don't always have to do that, and you can do that much less often. Although, again, there are benefits that's just sort of initially sort of like landing all your data in the data lake as an Apache Iceberg table. Not necessarily what I'm here to talk about right now, but there are definitely benefits to that. And cleaning up raw data. So again, a lot of the data curation is just easier from a data lakehouse because it's right there. They're not waiting for that data to be moved to a data warehouse. Technical professionals overwhelmingly agree AI is a national security priority. Okay, noteworthy in the light of center of U.S. executive order on AI. So that's more of a political thing where basically people realize that bad things can be done with AI if you're not careful, and they're leery of when and where and how oversight over these newer technological advances will happen. that will remain to be seen. Okay. But either way, regardless of the politics of it all, like at the end of the day, we have more growing use cases of data every day, and we need that data to be nimble. And this is why the data lakehouse is so important. And this is why tools like Dremio that make implementing and using a data lakehouse easier, faster, and more open are so important. So again, I really encourage you to get hands-on with Dremio. And again, I mentioned a blog. So let me head over to the dremio.com/blog. So that's dremio.com/blog. And if you scroll down a little bit, right here, this is blog Enter the Dremio Nessie Apache Iceberg on your laptop. So if you just want to try out Dremio right there on your laptop and just like spin up a Docker container and, you know, with Minio, with Dremio, Nessie, and just kind of see what it's like to use all this stuff together in a nice isolated environment on your laptop, follow this blog. It'll walk you through that. It's a great way to just kind of see it, feel it, without having to like at a small scale. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I recommend going to go read the full report. There's a lot more to the report. It's 17 pages. We've only gone through the first 5, which are the main insights from the article. But go read the full report. Take a look at the raw stats. See what insights you get from it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments on sort of like what you got out of this report. And yeah, my name is Alexmerced, developer advocate at Dremio. If you don't already follow me on LinkedIn, do. If you don't already follow me on Twitter, do so at @amdatalakehouse. And constantly, you know, just talking about data lakes and data lakehouses and modern data challenges. Have a great day and enjoy.